Benedicite Dominus. Welcome to question 138 of the Secunda Secundae. The topic of this lecture is Effeminacy and Pertinacity. And I am Dr. Thibault. So we are dealing with the parts of fortitude, one of the cardinal virtues. We have been looking at the potential parts of fortitude, which lastly was perseverance. And now we are looking at the contrasting vices associated with perseverance. You can see this on the screen. And then we are done with the virtues of virtues and parts of perseverance. So when we're dealing with effeminacy, it is primarily a deficiency. So as with all moral virtues, we are dealing with a golden mean, and the golden mean is perseverance. This is the virtue. It makes sense that the virtue is the golden mean, perseverance. Now with something's a golden mean, it means it's in the middle. So then there's an excess, which is a vice, and there's a deficiency, which is also a vice. So effeminacy is a deficiency. We will also look at pertinacity, Article 2, which is the excess. So effeminacy, that's kind of a charged word. I think it's a bit of a charged word anyway, especially in terms of it being a vice. Effeminacy is a vice. You hear traditional preachers talking about effeminacy a lot, kind of a Latin mass crowd type of discussion. You don't, if you've come from a more moderate or liberal parish, you probably have never heard a homily on effeminacy. Typically in the common parlance, secular parlance, effeminacy would not be a negative thing at all. We would say somebody is an effeminate male, or not necessarily an insult or a criticism, particularly a moral criticism. If anything, it's a descriptor. Have some sexual connotations to it, but it's not typically seen as a moral deficiency. Whereas if you're looking at this from an Aristotelian perspective, which a lot of what St. Thomas is using in this question is Aristotle, we're looking at from an Aristotelian perspective. It's not a positive thing, right? It's a vice. So Thomas, quoting Aristotle, says, well, an effeminate man is one who withdraws from the good on account of sorrow, caused by a lack of pleasure, yielding, as it were, to weak motion. Nicomachean Ethics, chapter 7. We'll get into what that means. But a person is effeminate, meaning that they are weak, they're going to give up so easy. And St. Thomas points out, if a person is strong, but they're just beaten down, they're not necessarily effeminate, he says. Even the walls of a castle, if it endures enough blows, it will fall, not because the wall was weak, but because the blows were strong. So similarly, just because a person has given up, right? Given up, because we're talking about perseverance. If a person gives up, it doesn't necessarily mean it's because they are weak. If a person has had the loss of a child, the death of a wife or a husband, some major thing, that's not weakness. It's not effeminacy, using Aristotelian language. It's if it's properly ordered, this is normal. That's not the issue. It's somebody who gives up in a very easy way, right? Somebody who didn't even really try. I'm good at linking movie clips into here. What I would show would be from the Birdcage. Nathan Lane, he's at the restaurant and he's trying to butter his toast, and he pokes the knife through it, and he goes to pieces there, screaming. Robin Williams' character, he says, "So you pierce the toast, so what?" Right? This is the image of effeminacy, right? This idea that a person just falls apart, piercing the toast when trying to spread the jam. Uh, Robin Williams' character tries to teach him how to not be so effeminate. Right? This is very stereotypical, but it's also pretty in line with what Aristotle's view of this might be. So he says effeminacy is created in two ways. One way is by custom. And some of the critics of modern society, conservative Catholic critics, would point to this, that we have a very effeminate culture. How is the culture so effeminate? Well, we're very drawn into luxury and immediate gratification, uh, and having comfort exactly where we are. Not a culture that's big into fasting, penance, and doing what is required, right? By church law, even saying, well, you have holy days of obligation. How many Catholics even follow the holy days of obligation? Um, or the fast days, or all of the Lenten practices. The church usually asks very little, and even the very little isn't done. Um, this is because of an effeminate culture, right? This is because we're so drawn into pleasure, we're so drawn into the immediate satisfaction. The idea that, if I want a coffee, I won't get one. It's just unthinkable. If you want something, just get it. If you want a steak on Good Friday, get a steak on Good Friday. You're not going to hold back, right, yourself for this, which is even having an effect on married life with open relationships and things like that, right? This idea that you would have to go without one of your desires, that you could have a desire that's not immediately met, is becoming more and more and more unthinkable. This is a culture of effeminacy. You don't get it your way right away, you have a mental breakdown. Right? This is the stories of the Karens a little bit too. I didn't get what I want exactly when I want it, and then it's a breakdown. The other one would be a matter of natural disposition. Now, this one's probably more controversial. The first one probably would be a good cultural critique. The second one is probably it's more personal, so it's perhaps more challenging. So Aristotle basically put all women under the category of effeminacy in some regard. Um, any woman who practiced what we would call femininity probably would. A woman that just lives how they want to live, maybe they're not. But in terms of classical elements of femininity, probably feminacy and femininity tie in, and that would not be a compliment. It would just be. It's fair to say that Aristotle doesn't expect very much of women either. Women are to do menial household tasks, but they're not really expected to do much. They're not expected to show as many of the stronger virtues. So there is a cultural bias in Aristotle, and St. Thomas is repeating Aristotle, so it continues. So if anyone's looking for a critique of Thomas, it's that he has adapted Aristotle's bias. And then the last line in this response to objection one is also the point of a submissive sodomite, a gay man, has taken into effeminacy. By their disposition, they have become women in that regard, which I guess depends if you want to take that as an insult or not. It puts them in the category of half the world's population women. So it's not a major insult, but it is saying that there are some individuals who are more um, men who by their nature are more women than men. And they're dealing with effeminacy. Um, you know, that would then be controversial today, because I think probably we can find examples of gay men, submissive gay men, as he points out, um, who are probably people who have very strong character, who can have perseverance to the, have very strong perseverance and not give up. Um, Somebody like Harvey Milk has some example of perseverance. Right? It's not weakness in this Aristotelian sense. I think probably Aristotle, he's dealing with more the image of um, male prostitutes, right? That were often young boys in Greece at this time. That's probably the image that he has, because Aristotle, at least, if not him personally, people within his circles would have been very familiar with homosexual acts, right? Being Alexander the Great, uh, it's just whether you were the submissive partner or the active partner, I guess matters to him more. So this is all hot off the press, interesting for a debate. But if we get too into that, you lose some of the point. Which back to the point is that you want to be strong. Whether in the modern day, whether you are a man or a woman, or you are a gay man or a straight person, it's not being not giving up at the first challenge. Right? I think that first definition of the culture is probably more applicable than the second today. This idea that we just give up, if you think of the Carthusians, they're praying from 11 o'clock at night until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning during a feast day of the 12 readings. They are picking the least convenient time, right? Midnight to 3 a.m. is the least convenient time to go to church. But we live in a culture where it's like, well, we need a Saturday night mass, and we need an 8 a.m. mass for the early risers, and we need a 9:30 family mass, and then we have a late 11 o'clock mass for the latecomers, and then you can go to the cathedral at 6 o'clock on Sunday night as the last chance mass. Right? We're always trying to accommodate. Well, this is effeminacy, right? We're accommodating an effeminate culture under this definition. Whereas a strong culture is perhaps more like the Orthodox, where it's like liturgy is 3 hours long. It's in a different language. It's you can't even see the altar because it's behind a wall. Right? This is perseverance, right? This is prayer and perseverance versus ours, which is like cheery music, name tags. Are you welcome? Are you comfortable? Are you okay? Do you want to come back? What can we do to help you? This is all effeminacy, right? So this is, I think a fair challenge to the culture. Now, pertinacity is the excess. Within the word pertinacity is the word tenere, tenacity, right? Tenacity is in it. So you have to, that's basically what this excess is about. So one who is headstrong, self-opinionated, very sure of themselves, very tenacious, utterly tenacious, as Saint Isidore of Seville points out. Well, they won't give up until they're victorious. This, though, is not a virtue. It's just too much, right? One should go to one's utmost ability to persevere, but you can be too much. My image of this is the image of a guy who has a crush on a girl, um, and he asks her out, and then he sends her flowers, and then he asks her out, and then he shows up at her house. It's just too much, right? It's tenacious. Like I won't give up until I get what I want. Well, you might get what you want more if you had perseverance versus being tenacious. Tenacious can be too much, overwhelming, um, right? Headstrong, too opinionated, right? You think you know what this girl wants, and she wants you, and you know that. Well, you don't even know her, right? So the proper way would be perseverance, right? Listen, be kind, become friends with her, get to know each other, right? You don't give up. The first time she's not interested, you don't necessarily give up, but you don't push. It's a very delicate balance. I think that's a good image here for this. Otherwise, you don't give up until you win. Well, that sounds like a good thing. But I think it's really to the point that you might be getting in the way of your own winning with pertinacity. Um, Contrast is effeminacy, where you don't even try, right? You give up so easily that you actually have no real opinions of your own. You just follow the flock, or you're challenged and you just fold. That's the opposite side. Perseverance is that golden mean. And St. Thomas uses the line from Cicero, Tully. Um, this is like superstition is to religion. It's too much, right? It's too much and it's not built on reality. Therefore, it's an excess. Religion is giving God what is due in truth, right? In light. Superstition is added barnacles to the ship. So, conclusion, effeminacy is a deficiency of perseverance, and pertinacity is an excess of perseverance. What we should aim for is perseverance itself. And that is the end of the potential part of fortitude. So next we will be moving on to the gift of fortitude, and then lastly, the precepts of fortitude.